Okay, welcome to the Rolex City Hobart Yacht Race. Okay, so this morning we're talking to some overall contenders for the race. Starting from the far end, Michael Steeves, the skipper, owner-skipper of Mark Twain. Next to him, Freddie Berner from Germany, with the Yacht Lunatics. Matt Allen, who most of you know, Ishiban, won last year. Stacey Jackson from Wildboats 10, and Exaltus, 1998 winner with Midnight Rambler. So let's start with you, Speezy. You've got a boat, the first boat to do 25 Sydney Hobarts. You've done 41 yourself, and you've got a few characters on your crew. Boat's heavy. How do you rate your chances, and who are you racing against?
Thanks, Di. We're basically in a corner. You know, I mean, if it's a fast race, we're shot before it starts. We're just a couple of old blokes going for a sail down the coast on Boxing Day. But if we, if the conditions line, it's a long race. For the fleet, and the planets align for us, and there's a bit of breeze at the end. We could be sort of there or thereabouts.
You've got some pretty heavy hitters on the boat. People like Brian Northcote.
Yeah, we're solid right through. We're just putting this program together. You wanted people who had sailed this style of boat, because I'd certainly forgotten it. Been, I think it's been 18 years since this boat's actually raced, and it's a bygone era, and we had to sort of think how things were done then and try to apply a little bit of modern technology to it. Things have changed, and we've learned a lot on the way through. But I really remembered how much I'd forgot when we sailed it for the first time in the trophy series.
Your line honours win in 1999 on a modern boat, and then winning overall on a modern boat a few years later. How is the thinking different?
It is a lot different, Di. It's everything's slower. The ergonomics are just horrible. The boat is probably more comfortable. The motion, it's a lot easier on the body. When I was bringing the boat up from Melbourne, coming through the rip at Melbourne Heads, we had quite an adverse sea. I'm going, here we go, we're going to slam. It's sort of like it's got suspension. That's how those boats were in those days. But it is different. I mean, you just got things happen at a slower pace. As I said, ergonomically it's horrible. You just try to limit the manoeuvres. You've got to plan the manoeuvres, limit the sail changes, and we've got the team around us, hopefully, that's sort of all on the same page mentally.
And are you going to be compensated maybe by having some real food on board rather than this freeze-dried on the rails stuff that the rest of these guys will be doing?
Well, yeah, we're back to basics of 3-burner matho stove, and I think people are actually making stews and freezing them like we did in the old days. So, yeah, it's nice to be able to have a hot coffee when you want to have one, and we'll be travelling pretty well.
And Freddie, you've got a nice style of boat as well, a bit more modern than Mark Twain, but she's a nice, big, comfortable boat. Will you guys be having some real food on your boat, or are you going to resort to the freeze-dried that the Grand Prix yachts will mostly?
Yeah, well, my boat is a performance cruiser, which cannot compete with the real racers. But we're hoping that we will do well, or as best as we can, in our division. And the reason that's a performance cruiser is I sailed her around half the world to get here and to compete here in this race. And I think it's not possible with a real racer. And so you need a little bit of comfort if you do all this way to here. And but anyway, it's a modern design. It's a 1-year-old boat. It's an XP50, and I think she's also good for racing, and we will see. We will.
All will become clear. Now, Matt, the targets on your back having won last year, but also won just about everything else that you've entered. Does that put pressure on you guys, or are you just going to go out there and say, sail my own race and not worry too much about everybody else?
Well, we went into last year's Rolex Sydney to Hobart race as favourite. This year we're going in as favourite again. So Look, we know a lot more about the boat than this time last year. We're a lot more confident in the boat and our sail setups and our rig setups. So, you know, we're all looking forward to the challenge of attempting to go back-to-backs. And I think this year's weather is looking pretty good for the TP52 and thereabout size, with that front on the 28th. Maybe coming in at around about when we're around Tasman. The time will tell how accurate that is. But I wouldn't write off the little boats either, because they're going to have a strong push behind them with the weather. So if any of them can sail fast enough downhill, I think will be the question. But so that the race is pretty open, but we're going to give it our best shot.
So of the smaller boats, who do you rate? Like, I guess Hooks Past, you likes downwind. Who else?
Yeah, look, I think that there's only a small number of boats that are probably with that very low rating that actually go downhill very well. A lot of the smaller, older boats probably are more upwind orientated boats. So I think any of those boats will have some chance in the race. But I think so it's going to take a long time to work out who's going to be the overall winner of the race. But I would still probably put my bets on that sort of mid-sized boat, depending on the timing of the front on the 28th.
Thanks. Now, Stacey, you have some heavy hitters on your boat. I mean, that's a really solid crew, but not a lot of you have sailed together before. Have you been able to get in much practice between the time you sort of hit the water with the boat and now?
Yeah, well, we have a very experienced crew. We have 21 laps of racing around the planet together and about 70 Hobart races amongst our crew. We haven't all sailed together at one time, but over our careers, most of us have sailed around the world together, so that sort of gives us a fair bit of experience. We've had a fairly solid prep leading into this. It's been short, but we've got a lot into our time, and we're confident that we've done the right preparation for the race.
And everyone's comfortable with the boat now, got to know the boat, and
yeah, absolutely. We've got a fantastic yacht. The Sandy Oatley and the Wild Oats sailing team have provided us Wild Oats 10. She's a beautiful yacht. She's going to love this downwind slide to Hobart, and we'll hope for the front to come through later. We hope to get it around Tasman, whereas Matt sort of wants it a bit sooner. So.
yes. And what are you hoping to achieve with the Ocean Respect Racing along the way?
Yeah, so we've got two missions. One is to do our best with the Tattersalls Trophy, challenge for it. And the second one is we are spreading a message about the state that the planet's in right now. So it's all about sustainability and reducing the use of plastic and looking after our ocean's health. So if we can do our best in the race and have everybody follow us along and get behind that same message, then we'll be really happy with our result.
Do you think a lot of people still don't realise the damage that the plastics and things are doing to the seas, and especially to sea life?
Absolutely. I think I've witnessed it firsthand now, having sailed around the world twice, and where we saw plastic in the most remote parts of the planet, and you think, well, how did this get here? But it's been floating in the water for tens of years, and it will for another couple hundred of years, because it just doesn't break down. And so it's a real message that we've got to get behind. So hopefully the yachts in this race can realise they don't have to take plastic water bottles on board. They can take water in their tanks and use sports bottles, and that's a really easy solution. And if you think about every boat, if they do that, the 91 boats in the race, that's a big difference we'll have made. So the small changes are actually big changes long term.
Thanks, Stacey. Now, Ed, you won the 1998 Sydney Hobart on a little boat, a HIG 35, and I asked you the other day, you're now on a Sydney 36. Why? Why the small boat? What did you get out of the small boat?
I'm just a silly old bugger, I'm afraid, going back to small boats like that. We've got a bunch of old guys, so we're all 20 years older now than what we were back then, and I was a lot fitter back then than what I am now. But look, there's still plenty of mongrel in this crew. Most of the guys have sailed with me for 20, 30 years. I've got four of them, I think, four of us that were in the 98 race, so there's plenty of mongrel there, but whether our bodies are capable of delivering on that mongrel, I'm not so sure. Why am I still here? Look, it's just mates. It's hard to explain, but it's just about the mateship, and also about taking on the best sailors in the world and hopefully giving them a bit of a hurry up every now and then is also quite a challenge as well.
And this current weather prediction, I mean, I know it changes in the lead up to the race, but how does that pan out for you guys on a little boat?
Oh look, our focus is division. There's such a split in the fleet these days. The big guys are so far in front. It's two different races really. I'd like to think overall we have some chance, but that's Huey, the god of the wind, and he's going to decide. We just needed to be competitive in our division, which is boats of our similar vintage and speed and style. What comes after that, well, who knows? I think Matt and Co are right. It's going to be a medium-sized to relatively big boat size that wins the race, the way the forecast currently is. When that southerly comes through, they're home and we're somewhere off, I don't know, Bicheno or somewhere like that, bashing into the southerly. So that's going to be bad for the smaller boats coming home. But there are some light patches as well. On the Thursday, there's some light patches, and if the big boats stop and we keep coming down on them, who knows? So there's a few variables there, but bigger boat, I think.
Opportunities for everybody.
Yeah, potentially. You never know.
Now your dad, Bill, he's done 22 Hobarts himself. He's been a Commodore of this club at two different periods, and he's firing the 10-minute gun this year on Boxing Day. Will you be aware of that as you hit the start line, and what does it mean to you?
Absolutely, yes. I'm so proud of my old man being there and being given this honour. He did, as you said, 22 Hobarts. I did my first 3 Hobarts with him when I was just a kid, and he taught me a lot about seamanship and the way to get a boat to Hobart. But he's 90 years old now. His health is failing, but he's hugely honoured to be there. I've got on the front of the boat, thanks to the CYC, they've given me 89 as our number. And 89 is the number that my father had in his sails for those 22 years. So that's a very special number for our family. It's almost like religious, 89 for our family. So to have that there and have my old man there is just fantastic.
Okay, I'm going to open the floor for questions. If you could just raise your hand. Okay, Steve.
One for Matt. Matt, 10 years ago, when you were Commodore and Ichiban was sailing and down at the docks in Hobart, you organised a very moving and special tribute 10th anniversary of the 98 race. What might we expect for the 20th anniversary?
Steve, I think it's more of a question for the club and what they're planning to do. But certainly there's going to be a moment's silence during the race on the radio skids, and I think the 20 years past the 98 race, it's important to remember what actually was learnt through that race. I mean, we know that 6 lives were lost. It was the largest peacetime maritime search and rescue operation in the history of Australia. And the lessons learnt and the legacy of those 6 lives lost were enormous changes to safety procedures, technology and training through the course of sailing. And that wasn't just done by the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia, that was done globally. And so many lives have been saved as a result of that tragic circumstances in 98. And I found 10 years ago that was a great solace to the families who had lost loved ones in that race. But certainly as a crew, we'll be remembering, those tragic events, but also remembering, the legacy and one of the things that changed was not only the training, the Safety Sea Survival course that the CYC invented, that's now a global course. That was one of the things that came out of the 98 race, but also all the safety standards right throughout the world have changed and changed for the better as a result of that race.
And the Soulless Trust came out of that
Hands
too,
up.
didn't it?
Can we do a hands up rather than just talking to people?
Yeah, well, the Safety of Life at Sea, or Soulless Trust, was established as a result of the 98 race, and they've contributed over $1.5 million back to search and rescue organisations throughout every state and territory in Australia. So another great legacy of that 98 race.
Adrian?
Freddie, can you give us a background as to the name of your boat? How do you come up with lunatics?
Yeah, I think you have to be a little bit lunatic or kind of a lunatic to sail half around the world on your own bump to participate in the Sydney Hobart. And it's the plural because the boat is owned by my brother-in-law and me, so we are 2 lunatics. And because it's an ex-yacht, it has to be an X in his name, and so we changed the CS at the end to an X, and that's the explanation.
is this the most challenging race you would have taken on, or after stuff that you've done in Europe?
Sorry.
Is this like the biggest test for the boat, the most challenging race you would have done?
I sailed several Cat 1 races in Europe too. I did the Fastnet, I did the Rolex Middle Sea race, and I sailed across the Atlantic to here in the RORC Atlantic race. It was also a Cat 1 race. But this was the only race I did with this boat before. The other races I did with my last boat. And so I thought I was well prepared here for the Sydney Hobart. But then I noticed that the demandings, the security demandings, are none in the world as high as here. And I think the Australians and the club, the CYCA, is doing everything which is possible to make this race safe. And it's sometimes it's a little bit challenging to fulfill all these demandings. But on the end, I know it's for our safety, and then it's good.
So, Matt, at this time of the year, so much of the attention to the public is on who gets there first. I hope up the Super Maxis, but as experienced sailors, how important is this overall title to you guys?
Yeah, look, I think most of the sailors look at the overall winner and the division winners, and I think Ed pointed it out. What you do in this race is you try and beat all the boats in your size range and then keep your fingers crossed. And, that's really what most of the people in this race are all about. We know that the Super Maxis create a lot of publicity and media interest, but the sailors are mostly about the overall win and trying to win your division and hoping for the weather gods to cooperate as well.
Stacey, would you consider sailing, it's going to sound like a really dumb question, I'm just preempting that, to be a man's sport as such, given that you're a total female team?
Well, I think this panel here kind of answers that question. I've put together an all-female team for the purpose of a lot of the top-level people I know in the world are female in sailing, and I think in the more recent years that's proved. With the introduction of the new rule in the Volvo Ocean race, that also helped women sailing at the higher level in our sport. But sailing is certainly a step behind. Like in Australia, we're seeing this year cricket, AFL and surfing all step up to try and equal either the coverage or the pay grade or the prize money to men. And sailing is going that way, but perhaps just a little bit slower than it should be.
Well, we know you get the same prize money.
Can I make a comment on that? I mean, talking about gender balance in the sport is a very important issue, but it's not only gender balance, it's diversity of the sport. But I think the really pleasing thing is that at the Paris 24 Olympics, sailing will require, out of 10 medals, 7 of those events will involve females, but also 7 events will involve males. So the gender balance that is being created by the Olympic Games is certainly going to flow through to the rest of the sport. And we're seeing that happen throughout the sport, where the percentage of female participation in the sport in Australia is going up quite solidly. And in some junior classes, there's plenty of examples where there's more female than male participation. So that'll come through the sport over the next 5 to 10 years.
And Matt can say that with his, forgot to mention, he's the president of Australian Sailing, so they're very involved in that decision-making process.
Michael, Freddie just said that you've got to be a lunatic to do one. What about 42? Why do you keep coming back?
Well, it's quite ironic, the fact that this boat here, I used to school holidays coming up and I'd be ticking the hours off, and I'd jump in my Sabo and I'd sail it around here and I'd tie it up. The place has changed alongside a little pontoon there. And I'd walk the docks, hoping to catch a bow line or something, or then be asked to have a look at the boat. And Mark Twain was one of the first boats I sort of adopted, and I sort of aspired to. There was another boat, Improbable. The guys sort of embraced me, American boat, and And here I am as sort of as a part of my life earlier, and then I did my first one, and it just sort of parlayed from there. Really, it's just really every my whole adult life and late teen life, and or even mid-teen life. I mean, Christmas Day was always Boxing Day Eve, and it's just been something that, with 1 year break where I had another clashing event, I've done. It's just been part of, as I said, essentially my whole life. Something I aspire to.
This is an open question. Have any of the vessels sustained any damage post Sydney's hailstorm yesterday?
We haven't.
I don't know yet, but I hope not. I've got to go and check it in half an hour.
Take more than hail to damage my train, I can tell you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. The guys will be available for some one on Monday.